Hi there, I'm Frank Crenshaw. This is Frank's Plastic Modeling Page. In this episode, I'm going to discuss how I'm going to make canopy mask for this 1/72nd scale Messerschmitt 109G6. I made another episode where I talked about how I could make wing stripes for a P-51, which was a very basic use of the Cameo cutter and its associated software. Now we're going to do something a little more advanced. This happens to be the masking set from the 1/48 scale Messerschmitt 109G by Tamiya, and it's just the tape mask that they provide and gives you the outline of the masks. That's great, but it's 48 scale. Now I'm assuming and I'm hoping that those masks, when scaled down, will actually fit these Tamiya parts, but we'll find out. So here we go. The first step to making the masks will be to scan the Tamiya masking sticker and simply have that available as a high resolution image. In this case, I'm scanning it at 1200 dpi and I'm scanning it at 100%. The reason I'm not choosing to scan it at a different size at this point is I don't have a lot of control over the scaling. So I'll do that later in the Silhouette software, and I'll show you how that's done. It's quite simple. But I don't need it in color. This is just a simple black and white outline. So having it like this really is no big deal. So the first thing we have to do is scan it. Now that we have the scanned image of our mask, what we need to do is bring it into the Studio Design software. An easy way to do that is simply drag the image, and this is the scanned image right here, into the Studio software. It's immediately sized. So what you're looking at is a 48 scale copy of the mask. So now I just have to trace it. One of the first things we have to do in order to make this mask is scale this image. And I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to do that. Now we're going to go from 1/48 to 1/72. And the math to do that is quite simple, but I'm just going to use my scale calc program to show me. So if I go from 1/48 to 1/72, it tells me I have a 66.67% reduction. Now you can do this math on your own, but again, this program just makes it easy, so I use it. And that's what I care about in this particular case, is the 66.67. So how do we do that? So first thing we do is we select our image, and then we're going to go over to the Transform tab of the Silhouette Design Studio, which is this tab right here along the left side, the one that has, it looks kind of like some bars, vertical bars. The Transform tool is actually this right here. Now how we're going to use this is quite simple. I'm just going to put in 66.67 since I want to do this by percent, and I'm going to click Apply. Now this rounds it to 66.7, but in my experience, for the sizes we're working in, that's probably not a big deal. So we then click Apply, get out of the Transform tab, and now we're ready to make masks. Since I've scanned the image at 1200 dpi, I can really zoom in, which is incredibly useful when doing this. So in this case, I'm going to use my polygon tool, and I'm going to trace along the straight edges of the outside. For these masks, I'm going to follow the outside edge, and then size them to the model as needed. Hopefully they're close. The straight parts are easily accomplished simply by just following along the edges of the line. Now as you can see, these corners round, and then it turns into a curve. So here I have to transition to a different tool. But before I do that, I'm going to straighten these lines up and make sure they're as close to the edges as I can get them. And you do have to be careful when playing around with this, because it's quite easy to click on the backdrop and accidentally move it. And if you do that, you just click the undo key right here. But so far this looks pretty good. So now I need to go and I need to add some curves. This time I'm going to add a curve shape, the figure 8. Okay, we're going to zoom way in, and we're just going to do these edges. So I'm going to do a round, that's about the point of it, and then somewhere over in here. Now when we click on this, we can see the points. And if I click on the points, I get spline handles. And the spline handles, I can turn them and actually change the shape of the curve. If I pull them out, the curve gets wider and flatter. If I push them in, it gets narrower, and of course I can change the angle of it as well. And again, if you don't like something you've done, just click the undo. Alright, now we just need to come up to the other side and do it. Oops. You have tremendous control with these spline handles. They're very useful. Okay, so now that we've got those corners made, what I'm going to do is make this curve that runs down the center. And again, whoops, I accidentally moved my drawing. Alright, so let's select the curve tool. And go at it. So just by some careful back and forth manipulation of those spline points, we have a curve that fits almost perfectly around the outside edge of that particular window. So now we'll just continue drawing these. The simple shapes are obviously these center pieces and this piece. There's some curves further back here, but I'm not going to bore you doing that. I'm just going to fast forward to the next part. Alright, here we are at the end. Now I haven't done these armored canopies masks, and I guess I could do them, but I'm not going to do them for this video. So now that I'm done making the masks, as you can see through the red lines on everything. Everything is pretty much masked. Everything is pretty much mapped, I should say, not masked. If I click on Edit the Points and zoom in, if something isn't quite right, I can tune it. That looks like it needs just a little bit tighter. There we go. But everything looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And so now we just have to finish up the mask. Now to do that, I'm going to do some things that you might not be used to. I'm going to actually move this out of the way. I no longer need it. If you notice, I did not make masks for the right side of the canopy, and that's because they're just going to be copies of this. What I do need to do is click on these things, and I need to make these things compound paths. That's already a compound path, so that's okay. So I can just duplicate it. And then I'm going to move it down here. All right, now I have to flip it, and I'm going to flip it vertically. So what I've just basically done is just made a copy. Now flip vertically, you know, it just mirror images the item. Same with this. Click on it, make sure it's a compound path. Don't need to. Duplicate. Move it. And it looks square, but just to make sure, I'm going to flip it vertically, which shouldn't actually make a difference, but just to be safe, that's what I'm going to do. This one we have to make a path. So there you go. Completed mask ready to make. I am going to go ahead and go through these other pieces and make them compound paths as well. Alright, so there's the mask. As per my last video, now we just have to cut some masking film and send it to the actual cutter. Took me a little bit of resizing, but here's the winner. The final cut was using Tamiya masking sheet, which just works superb for this kind of thing. I have to give it the edge over the border models material. Even though the border models did work, it leaves a little bit of residue when you pull it off. The Tamiya masking sheet will be my preferred method of making masks going forward. I mean, the border material has its uses, but it does leave behind some residue, so you got to be aware of that. The final cut was made on my Cameo 4 using the aftermarket blade holder in a 45-degree blade. The results are stunning. I mean, it just turned out good. So now I'm just going to put these masks on and we'll move on to the next phase. Well, and there you go. Masks are on and in place.